Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
While walking to my gate at Lax, I noticed a woman whose dog was in the middle of doing its business. The woman was loudly FaceTiming with her back to the dog, so I assumed she didn't notice. That was likely the thought shared by the gentleman who tried to get her attention. "Excuse me, miss," he said in a polite tone. The woman glared at him. "Your dog." He sheepishly continued, pointing to the mid-poop pup. The woman rolled her eyes and went back to FaceTime as the man slinked away, seemingly embarrassed. "Some people," she bellowed to her FaceTime companion, "there's no hint of irony, are just so damn rude." When her dog finished, the woman started walking away, leaving everything right on the airport floor. Another woman tried to stop her. "You're not going to clean that up?" she asked, as shocked as the rest of us were. "They have people for that," the offender replied, disappearing into the crowd as much as someone yelling into their phone can disappear into a crowd. I stood near the pile and warned people to walk around it while someone else got a maintenance worker's attention. No one said anything. We were so shocked that anyone could be that horrible. When I got to my gate, the woman was there too. Great. We were both going to Tokyo. When I travel abroad, I get embarrassed by other Americans doing things 100 times less embarrassing than leaving animal feces on the floor of an airport. To make it worse, her dog was now barking at everyone who walked by. I have nothing against people flying with their dogs. I do it often. But it's a privilege I take seriously. My dog is well trained and behaves better than most people. He certainly behaves better than that a-hole. Speaking of a-holes, there is a pit relief area inside Lax, past security just 2 gates away from where the party pooper let her dog go to town. It didn't matter. She was the type of person to litter 3 feet from an empty garbage can. While her dog barked at the world, the woman had moved from FaceTiming with no headphones to listening to music with no headphones. I don't like to throw around the word sociopath, but I don't know how else I could explain just how selfish and terrible of a person she was. I'd bet her car was somewhere in long-term parking, parked across 3 spots with paint on a bumper from the child's bike she hit without leaving a note. Everyone else tried to ignore her, sitting as far away from her as they could. I am not everyone else. I sat down right next to the horrible woman. "Are you going to London on business?" I said. "I am going to Tokyo," she responded gruffly, annoyed that I interrupted her DJing. "Oh, then you better hurry. That flight got moved to gate 53C. This is a flight to London." I figured I could give her a little moment of panic as payback for how terribly she was treating everyone. I didn't predict what would happen next. She grabbed her bags and her dog in a huff and stormed out of the gate without even checking. She was so self-involved, she didn't notice that the monitor at our gate still said Tokyo, and almost everyone at the gate was Japanese. Based on her actions, she believed me that the fight had been moved. So she's also an a-hole for not thanking me. Some people, I thought as I watched her rush away from the gate without stopping her, are just so damn rude. The flight to Tokyo was at gate 69A, so the 53 gates were on the other side of the next terminal. And I felt guilty knowing she probably berated some poor clerk who had to explain to her that there was no gate 53C. I don't know if she made it back to this flight before we took off or not, but I didn't see her board and I didn't hear her dog. Her missing her flight was not my original intention, but it would be a fine punishment for her being so rude to everyone and making a low-paid stranger clean feces off the floor. What makes me wonder if I went too far is the knowledge that Delta only has 1 flight to Tokyo each day. Maybe she can rebook on another airline. I hear they have people for that. At the time of this story, I was in college and had spent the last few summers and breaks working at a major car dealership. I was and still am obsessed with cars, and all I wanted to do was spend my days around cars and people who knew them. It was overall a great job. First I was a washer, then parts, stock boy, detailer, delivery driver, mechanic's assistant, then a mishmash of all the jobs at the same time since I knew the place and how things worked. This particular day I was driving, there was one customer, Marge, who seemed perfectly fine at first. Marge and a separate couple had dropped their cars off very early, 7 a.m., and needed rides. The couple just wanted to get dropped at their place, which was only a few miles away, while Marge needed to go into the nearby major city for work, which was about 20 miles. Upon starting the shuttle van, I asked my usual, "What kind of music do y'all like?" Instantly, the dude from the couple says, "Oh, put it on K whatever. We were rocking out on the way over." Without any comments from the others in the van, I obliged. After some conversation with the couple about Springsteen and 80s rock, I dropped them off and carried on. Marge had been mostly quiet thus far, saying only where she was going and what time she needed to be picked up in the evening. Duly noted. As we got closer to her destination, she became visibly agitated, and even though I knew pretty well where I was going, she began giving me excruciatingly specific instructions as to which cars to pass, which lane to be in, how fast to go around the exits, and so on. I took it in stride and easily acquiesced to her direction, despite it being more than a little condescending. This kind of micromanaging continued until we pulled up to her office building. She reiterated that exactly 5 was the time to be there, and specifically said to be in the exact parking spots I had stopped in to let her out. It was a public spot, parallel parking with no meters, so I thought it was a strange request, but said okay anyway. The last thing she said before getting out of the van was, "Also hate, absolutely hate this music." Internally I said, "Okay, you could have told me 30 minutes ago," but again played the nice driver and outwardly said, "I remember that." The rest of the day went by and the last thing I had to do was get Marge from work. I stopped at the dealer to check in and had about an hour to get to Marge's office 20 miles away. I knew rush hour traffic could be bad in the city, so I left plenty early and told my manager I was heading out to be safe. Traffic was about as terrible as can be, so around 4:30 in gridlock I called Marge's office from the van to let her know there is a chance I might be a few minutes late. She doesn't answer and it rings forever. Eventually her cubicle neighbor picks up the phone and tells me she's already left for the day. I tell the guy on the phone if he sees her to please call me. Immediately after hanging up I called my manager and informed him of the situation. The manager says, "She just called asking where you are. She said she tried calling you 3 times and got no answer." I say, "I just tried her office and someone said she already left." I checked my phone and had no missed calls. Then asked, "What time did she want to be picked up again?" 5 o'clock. You still got 30 minutes, so it's alright. Don't worry about it. I told my manager that if she contacts me again, give her my number. Again, and that I would try to call her office in 15 minutes regardless. At this point, I figured that even surface streets would get me there in time, so I exited off the highway. This was generally correct until I got downtown. I was only a couple blocks from the office when I hit a roadblock for construction that wasn't there when I dropped her off in the morning. It was a one-way that led straight to the front of the office, so I had to figure out a way around. This was about exactly when I told my manager I would call her office, around 4:45, so I pulled over and I called. This time Marge answered, not the co-worker. I informed her of the situation and she was audibly angry. At this point, I'm still 15 minutes before our scheduled pickup time, as confirmed by her twice and my manager once. But she's obviously pissed. I play the customer is always right role on the phone, get enough information from her about the neighborhood to get around the construction, and arrive in front of her building no later than 5:02, and I called again. Again, the coworker picks up and tells me she left for the second time today. Momentarily later, I see her walk out the front and go to the parking spot where I dropped her off this morning, no more than 2 spots behind me. There was no way I could have taken the same spot since there was another car in it, but the van was obviously in view with its huge dealership logo on it. It seems as though she's refusing to walk over to the van when I see her take out her phone. Expecting my phone to ring, I wait, and nothing. She seems to be looking directly straight at me and clearly aware of the van when my phone finally rings. It is my manager, saying that she's looking for me and can't find me, accusing me of being late. I step out of the van onto the sidewalk and call her name while still on the phone with my manager. She slowly wanders over without saying a word and gets into the front passenger seat of the van. Okay then. I tried to make a quip about it being 5:04 and she's just totally silent. Okay then. Let's get out of the city onto the highway. As soon as I get up to highway speeds, she flips out, claiming she had heat stroke from waiting outside for so long, saying she's never seen such unprofessional behavior, claiming that I very unspecifically insulted her personally and demanding to talk to my manager when we get back. Okay then. At this point, I'm oscillating between being good by the dealership versus being good to myself. At first, I decided on the former and apologized profusely. She's completely numb to anything I say and just keeps repeating how she can't believe how horrible of a person I am. I can't even understand what she's so angry about, and so I continue to attempt to make nice. I even offered to order her office lunch the following day, to which she replied, "Nothing. There is nothing I want to hear from you. Just give me back so I can talk to your boss, and don't say anything else to me." Okay then. A few miles down the road, she begins micromanaging again, telling me which cars to pass, what lane to be in, how fast to drive, and so on. At this point, I was still resigned to my fate serving this woman, until she made a request. "Because we're late, 4 whole minutes, I need you to stop at my house. It's on the way." She directed me to her house, which, to be fair, was actually on the way. Wordlessly, she got out and went inside, only to emerge a few minutes later with a tiny little lap dog on a leash. I swear she stared me down until she was out of sight, as though she was proving something, walking that yipper around the block. She got into the van 4 minutes late, most of which was because she was too stupid to reply and to see where I parked. But she spent 40 minutes walking with that 10-pound dog while I sat there in the van like a dope waiting. Enough, I thought. I'll be a senior next fall. I don't need this crap job. She came back to the van and got in. I put on a radio station she told me she hated that morning, only this time much louder. She very angrily indicated she didn't like this music. When I didn't react, she reached and lowered the volume herself. Oops. Steering wheel control switch. It's actually louder than before. Don't like it? Why don't you try changing the channel this time? Oops. Now we're on a hard rock channel, and somehow even louder. Change it again? Nope. Back to hard rock. Now I want to reiterate that I said earlier that I am obsessed with cars, but I will clarify specifically that I have been racing since I was 10. I started on karts, moved up to shifter karts before getting my license, got into track days with my dad by 17, and had built myself a focused Auto X competitor by the time this story happened. I was known to my friends as the one who should drive if we really need a driver. It doesn't matter if you're driving a Chevy Venture minivan, any car is capable of a lot more than the average driver thinks it is, and I was just young and stupid enough to consider proving that this day. So we set off with a goal unbeknownst to her. You're upset about being late? Let's get you there as fast as possible. With Alice in Chains blasting on a radio louder than I would ever personally care to listen to, I am pushing this pokey minivan harder than anyone has pushed a minivan before. It doesn't have much pickup, but on braking there is predictable understeer, and the off-throttle weight balance makes for a nice and controllable oversteer, albeit with a considerable body lean. Front-wheel drive means I can give the engine and tries to make scary sounds noises while pulling through a corner she was already terrified upon entering. We hit an off-ramp at 80 and I lip brake from the left lane into a right lane at the intersection when she grabs the door handle and screams to slow down. Which we hit that apex perfectly, and don't tell me how to drive. What? Slow down and move into which lane? Sorry. What I heard was pass traffic on a shoulder at 40 and keep going despite all the gravel and debris. Please slow down, you say? Did you mean run through the Coles parking lot, out her connector at 50 to cut the boulevard and skip the light? Because that's what I heard. It's all for you, ma'am. Let's get you there on time. It was only about 10 miles from her house to the dealer, but I probably took 1,000 miles out of the life of those tires that day. We arrived at the dealer and she was flustered to grossly understand the situation. I stopped in front of the service door and gave my business as usual. Here we are. Have a great day. I waited for her to get out. She was still gripping her seatbelt and slowly stammered, I need to speak with your boss, manager. Given that I already decided to quit, I responded with a tone that probably sounded more fitting to a child on Christmas and said, oh yes, I'll get him for you, and promptly got out of the car while she was still sitting. I jaunted inside and found my manager hanging with one of the parts department guys. All I say is Marge wants to see you. She's not happy. And both of them immediately burst out laughing hysterically. They laugh and laugh and laugh for so long that I am certain it is a joke at my expense. Finally, I remind my manager that there is an angry customer and less considerably ask, what do you two think is so funny? Well, that woman is terrible. She complains every single time we do anything on her car, says my manager. The parts guy says, last time she accused John, usual shuttle driver, 65 years old and patient as a saint, of being disrespectful and accused Greg, service advisor, of stealing from her. I wasn't really sure how to react at this point, but because she made me sit and wait 40 damn minutes while she walked her purse dog, I had gone overtime, so just silently went to clock out. After clocking out, I went back to the service office to eavesdrop on a conversation between her and my manager. I heard her quite honestly and in great detail recount every traffic violation and personal indiscretion I perpetrated, only in a very disjointed and exasperated manner. My manager quietly listened to all of it, while I was around the corner wondering if I would even have a chance to put in my notice before getting fired. When she finally slowed down and gave him a chance to respond, all he said was, Marge, it seems unusually irregular that you are dissatisfied with our service. Maybe it is better for both of us if you take your car to a competitor dealer next time. And with that, I turned and walked off, knowing that I had both gotten away with something awful and apparently unknowingly solved a problem for my co-workers at the same time, because she had been such a thorn in the side of everyone in the service department. Nobody even cared to look into whether there was any truth to her claims. The following morning, I put in my 2 weeks' notice with the head of the dealership. Does it have anything to do with yesterday? No, I am heading back to school in 4 weeks, and I just want a couple of weeks off beforehand. He wished me luck, and I finished out my 2 weeks without being asked to drive another customer anywhere. I have worked in aviation for nearly 20 years, from small airports to large commercial hubs. Like any industry, it's full of type A personalities and those promoted up to their respective level of incompetence. To protect those involved, I will not name the airport or the company I worked for. At the time the story occurred, I had worked my way up in a company that is contracted to pump the fuel into the aircraft at one of the busiest airports in the US. My job was a supervisor in charge of fuel quality and safety adherences. The airport I worked at was growing. It went from middle of the pack to being in the top 10 for total operations in about 3 years. As such, there was and still is a lot of construction going on in order to have more gates and parking areas. This has involved restripping the gates and adding more jet bridges onto the existing terminal. This usually is a pain, but works for the most part when there is only so much room to work with. For fueling, a hydrant system is commonly used, as it is far faster and more convenient than having tanker trucks go up to every plane. Instead, a piece of equipment is staged at each gate and hooks up to a pit in the ground where fuel is delivered directly from the storage tanks and can be pumped to the plane. These are large underground pipes that once in place are rarely, if ever, moved. If you move your gate, that pit stays put and isn't as conveniently located as it first was. Might be too far away from the plane, might be under the plane, and so on. When the airport authority decided to add a new gate at the end of the terminal, I was invited to the meeting thanks to my position. I guess I was expected to just sit and nod or something, since every time I pointed out that the new gate would put the pet under the jet or on a wrong side, I was basically told, "We will make it work," or "This is the only way we can do it." After being shot down a few times, I gave up. 4 months of construction to expand the passenger waiting area and attach a jet bridge brings us to the first day of use. There is a ribbon-cutting ceremony and the first arrival is brought into the gate. The fueler calls me because he doesn't like how he has to run his hoses and wants me to sign off on his solution. I pull up and see that the bit is under the lift engine 737 fuel panel is on a right wing. So he has to run the pit hose under the fuselage, which is full of passengers. This hose is a 3-inch inner diameter and is capable of delivering around 800 gallons per minute. Equipment slows that down as appropriate per aircraft. Should a tug or anything hit that line, it will get bad and fast. I say there is no way we can use that pit, and there isn't another one to choose from. I advise the airline and they say, "Use a truck then." I responded, "We can't. The jet is within 20 feet of a wall of the terminal and we can get a truck in front. If we are behind the jet, we will block the taxi lane and no aircraft are getting in or out of 8 gates. We can't safely fuel an aircraft at this gate." Well, you can imagine how this went over. Within 15 minutes, I had the highest level person in town for the airline, the airport duty manager, who brought a couple of airport police with him for some reason. My GM and a manager for the baggage loaders all at the gate. I explained the issue and stated that I will not allow fueling as it's not safe to run pressurized jet fuel under an aircraft and that the pit is underneath the engine itself. Both of these violate numerous regulations. My GM looks at it and agrees. The airline head starts yelling and the duty manager says he will have the fire department come look, and if they say it's good, we are responsible for fuel. Fire battalion chief comes up, hears the issue, and walks over to look. He then gets a rolling wheel measure and walks it from the bed to the building and then back to his truck. He comes back with a red tag and puts the pit permanently out of service, as it was too close to the building. He tells everyone that as he sees it, there is no way to legally fuel at that gate as it is too close to the building and the fuel truck will block a fire escape path. For the next 2 months, the airline used the gate as overflow with no fuel, meaning they had to bring the plane in with enough fuel already or fuel it out on a cargo stand. Then it was cordoned off and demolished, and then old lines were restored. Not sure how many millions that cost, but it had to be a few. Bring your popcorn because this is a long one. Looney Lucy is a solvently food-stealing, clothes and destroying waste of carbon. I dealt with it by keeping my space clean and ignoring her areas, storing my food at work or my boyfriend's place, and installing a lock on my bedroom door so she couldn't borrow outfits that looked like she could fit into, but she had 30 pounds on me. Oh, that made Looney Lucy a bad roommate. But I had my workarounds, and she had the one saving grace of being quiet at night. So I put up with it, that is, until she broke our cardinal roommate rule. No one gets a key to the apartment without both roommates agreeing. That rule was sacred. I couldn't even give a key to my boyfriend of more than a year. Unbeknownst to me, Looney Lucy had met a guy online who lived several hours away. Within 2 weeks of meeting him, she invites him to meet in real life and stay over for the weekend. Looney Lucy then mailed the strange man a key to our apartment because he was going to get into town before she got off work. You read that right. A man she talked to for only 2 weeks, had never actually met, and who I didn't know about, now had a key to our shared apartment, and she wasn't going to be there to greet him. But I was. I'm starting laundry while wearing only my Victoria's Secret robe because I'll be hopping into the shower right after. I hear the locksmith turn around and see the door swing open to reveal a thin, creepy-looking guy in a trench coat who just stands there silently while I freeze like an idiot rabbit. The creepy guy suddenly steps forward into the apartment. I come out of my startle, scream bloody murder, and chuck the laundry detergent at his head before scrambling into my bedroom and locking the door. He's yelling that it's okay, he's Looney Lucy's boyfriend, and I scream at him that I don't care who he is, get out, or I am calling the cops, and my 6'4" built like a tank boyfriend. The creepy guy leaves, and to his credit even locks the door behind him. Poor guy. I call Looney Lucy and ask her if the creepy guy is her boyfriend and if she gave him a key. She said he was, and she did. She gushes about how they met. I hang up on her mid-sentence and call my boyfriend, who, lucky me, actually is 6'4" and built like a tank. He comes over and we pack up the essentials, and I move in with him that day. We hadn't thought we were quite ready for that step, but turns out that in the face of Looney Lucy, we were. No apology or even excuses from Looney Lucy when my boyfriend and I go back the next week to get the rest of my stuff. He yells at me that it's my fault, that I overreacted and that I'm lucky. The creepy guy didn't press charges for the mild concussion my laundry detergent gave him. Now, I'm slow to true anger. I'll complain and moan with the rest of them, but actual rage is not in my usual repertoire of emotion. But guess what? I'm there now. Looney Lucy needs to pay. Still have that popcorn? Good. Now the 2-year lease is in my name only because Looney Lucy's credit is so crappy that nowhere in a good part of town would take her. She'd been living with her parents over an hour away from her job for months before we started rooming together. Hindsight tells me that this is because no one else would room with her prior to me. Hindsight's a witch. So there is nothing legally preventing me from subletting the apartment for the remaining 14 months on a lease. I could also evict her, but that wouldn't be nearly as fun as what I decided to do instead. I post a roommate ad on Craigslist and make it quite the deal. I'll keep my original deposit on file and pay the first 2 months rent and sublet fee, but on the condition that they know they are living with boot thieving, clothing destroying witch slob. I may want revenge, but I am not willing to sucker some innocent person into it. Over the next couple of weeks I get a few nibbles, but no one has a flavor I'm looking for to match Looney Lucy. Then I get a message from Kevin. Kevin goes down my list of warnings. Kevin doesn't care about the food thieving, and he orders takeout and hates leftovers. For obvious reasons, Kevin isn't worried about Looney Lucy borrowing his clothes, and Kevin admits that he's a huge slob and not having to pay attention to it is actually a plus. Kevin says the 2 months rent seems kind of excessive and that there must be more to the story if I'm willing to pay that on top of the deposit and the sublet fee. So I tell Kevin the rest of the story. Kevin tells me he will take the deal, but I should know something about him. Kevin says he's very happily active in the single scene. Not looking to settle down, but very much looking to continue bringing people home. Sometimes they will stay for a couple days or a week at a time. So it's good to know the key rule isn't really that big of a deal. I tell him it sounds like he and Looney Lucy will be a good roommate match. Kevin fills out the paperwork, leasing office does its credit/background check and gives it the green light. I mail Kevin my key. Kevin moves in. I get a frantic call from Looney Lucy about a strange man showing up saying he lives there with her now. I tell her that's right, he does, and explain the subletting process. She starts raging at me. I hang up and mute her calls. Over the next few days, I get a lot of voicemails. Some raging, some whining, and some begging. Looney Lucy has been forced to clean and take out the trash like a slave or something because Kevin doesn't bother. Looney Lucy can't move out because she can't get a lease anywhere else, and her parents won't let her move back home. Looney Lucy has to keep paying her half of the rent because Kevin told her if she stopped, he'd change the locks and move all her stuff out. After a few weeks of radio silence, Looney Lucy calls again and I decide to pick up. She tells me she's so happy to get a hold of me. I have to do something. Kevin is now bringing his male friends home every couple nights, and sometimes they don't leave for days and days. Yeah, having a roommate who hands out keys without your consent to guys you don't know is a witch, isn't it? This was about 2 years ago while I was living at my buddy's place. Place wasn't in the best part of town. So theft happens all the time, and for the large part, most of these crimes are met with a sucks to be you attitude from the police who then create a report and forget anything happened entirely. Okay, so I woke up early on Thursday morning with a call from my roommate who was running to work at 5 a.m. and he explains that the detached garage has been broken into. The thief broke in through the window and stole a bunch of stuff, with highlights being Milwaukee drills, motorcycle jackets, and a receiver and a sub from one of those surround sound systems in a box packages deals, but leaves the speakers around the rest of the place. Saying that I was livid is an understatement. I work hard for my things and have no intention of replacing them, so some jerk can sell them for a very small profit. So for roughly the next 4 days, my focus is entirely on this, and you'll see why shortly. So I know the chances are slim that I will ever find my stuff, but hey, it can't hurt to look for it at the common online sales places. I used ePay searching local sellers only, and I put alerts on Craigslist, an extremely handy feature. And I tell my roommate to keep an eye on Craigslist since he has a little time. So fast forward to Friday, my roommate calls me up and tells me he thinks he found our stuff on Craigslist. I pull up the ad and sure, there it is. This beautiful, not too bright gentleman had taken all the stuff he took from us and put it into a single ad in the barter section of Craigslist. He even added the model numbers, not the serial numbers, making things very easy to identify. The giveaway was this cheap surround sound system for which he only had a receiver and a sub, and after a quick search reveals this particular system is only sold as a package. You can't buy the single components, so this was definitely our stuff. I call the police, thinking case closed, but guess what? They don't care that I found this stuff on Craigslist, and after about 20 minutes of complaining on a phone, with non-emergency, they ask me what I want them to do. I call the police, thinking case closed, but guess what? They don't care that I found this stuff on Craigslist, and after about 20 minutes of complaining on a phone with non-emergency, they ask me what I want for them to do. I say, send the car over here, I want to speak with someone directly. So they reluctantly send the car with a very nice officer. She was nice, I'm sarcastic, but she was really nice. Who runs the number associated with the Craigslist ad, and guess what? He's got a rap sheet a mile long and has been arrested like 10 times for theft. With a break in the case, I think I'm home free. But nope, a cop can't do anything. The investigator needs to take care of this, she says, and leaves. So I call the investigator who doesn't work on Fridays. I ask who I can speak with, so they send me out to the investigator's team line, to which no one answers at all. I try again on Saturday and learn that the investigators don't work weekends at all, and I'd have to wait until Monday before I can talk to my investigator. Good thing crime doesn't happen on weekends, otherwise cops' weekends will be in trouble. So I call on Monday and a sergeant drags his feet out and is out sick. It was at this point I was done trying to call them. I drove to the police station and demanded to speak with an investigator. I mentioned to this new investigator the situation and the name of the guy who was in a Craigslist ad, and the cop knows him very well and has arrested him on a couple occasions. The cop is confident the police can now help me since I've already done all the dang work here. Finally, the cops tell me to make a meeting with this guy and let him know when and where. So again, the work is on me. And to meet this guy. Thanks, police. So I text him a few times with no response. Then I call him and joke around and express interest in a variety of items, most of which are mine, but a few that aren't. Since simply asking for the things from one of the victims is suspicious in my mind. So I tell him I'm Christmas shopping. I then say I'm from out of the area and ask him to pick up the location, and he lists off a few places, one of which is a grocery store within eyesight of the police station, so I pick that and laugh to myself at how this is turning out. I call the cops to let them know the deal is on, and when and where it is. They say they will be in an unmarked car and that I should take my wallet out as a sign to swoop in to make the arrest. So I pulled into the parking lot, I see no cops and I stop and wait. I think the guys are a no-show when he finally shows up 10 minutes late. My heart is pounding at this point. I get out, meet the mastermind criminal, and shake his hand. He proceeds to pull out my stereo, then my drills, and a few other odds and ends, and before I can get my wallet out, a gold Taurus speeds in, and out pops 3 cops with guns drawn and cuffing the guy. When this happened, I just turned around and walked away for a second while they put him in a car. The lead cop asks me if this is my stuff, and I say yes, it matches with a previously provided very detailed description I gave the police. All the while the guy in cuffs is yelling that's my stuff. Finally, the cops get the warrant for his apartment and find the rest of all of our stuff and a few other people's things. And I have all my stuff back by Wednesday the following week. He received 1.5 years in a state penitentiary for his efforts. I kinda fixate sometimes, and he got unlucky by stealing from someone who didn't just claim renter's insurance.